Okay, so the Neon Demon, Nicolas Winding Refn, whatever. I avoided this movie during its little tiny theatrical release, and I regret it because watching it on video, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought it was great. I think a lot of the criticisms of this film are ridiculous. I think a lot of them are off base and wrong. I thought it was just a great movie, and in my mind, it redeemed Refn in my mind. You know, after Only God Forgives, this was like, whoa, a definite, just as good as Drive. I think, you know, right next to Drive, one of my favorites of these three Refn films that I've seen. I didn't see the Pusher films, the earlier Nicolas Winding Refn films, the Pusher films, or Valhalla Rising, or Bronson, or anything like that. Drive, to me, was just this existential, art house, action masterpiece. Great movie, great movie. You look at Ryan Gosling in that film, you see the emergence of a new kind of action star, you know? I mean, of course he was a child actor. He'd done a ton of, you know, weepy dramas and stuff before that. But you look at Ryan Gosling in Drive and you kind of squint, and you can see just a little bit of Steve McQueen, of Paul Newman, of those existential 70s type actors, you know. And then he took Ryan Gosling and he went to Thailand and he made this movie, Only God Forgives, which was a movie about boxing and like underground fighting and drug dealing and dirty cops and vengeance and people coming to terms with their past wrongs and like the force of vengeance, like the hand of God coming and and I mean, like, wow. And the film that ended up being made is like Ryan Gosling staring at his fist for 2 hours, and then he gets beaten up. And then somebody cuts off his hands, I guess. It reminded me of, in Barton Fink, like the movie that Barton Fink was writing, and then he takes it into the studio head, and the guy's like, what the hell is this, man? You got a guy, this is a movie about men, big men in tights, in the ring, you know, they're fighting it out, and you're having them like wrestling with their emotions, you know. It was unsatisfying, you know. That's what I would describe it as. Not a disaster, not a disappointment, unsatisfying. It was a beautiful film to look at. I mean, it involved the guy who was the gaffer and had been the director of photography on Stanley Kubrick's last film, Eyes Wide Shut. And so he had the technical people behind him. The film looked like beautiful. Like, I mean, there's very few films that even really look like Only God Forgives, which shoot like the night, you know, the neon soaked Thailand night. It's such a unique looking film, but it just doesn't have this driving plot. It's writing checks that it can't cash. It has this big visual style, and it's just Only God Forgives, I'm sorry, but it's almost a portrait of all style and no substance. It just needed some like B-movie writer to come in and do a rewrite on it, in my opinion. It just needed like somebody who like made like Roger Corman films to just come in and it's like, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Let's just, you know, pack it in with plot and ideas. But in any case, it is what it is, and it's just unsatisfying to me. The Neon Demon is not unsatisfying. The Neon Demon is a pretty simple story. I mean, it's just the story of a young woman, the naive young promising star who goes to Hollywood and just gets tampered with, gets who is kind of brought into this high life, the fast world of Hollywood. It's life in the fast lane, and then gets kind of run through the grinder, and her inevitable fall from that. And I mean, so it's a simple story enough, and it's really a story that's just tailor-made for what Refn does with, or has done with Drive and Only God Forgives, and now this film. These films have a great style, and so the idea of a filmmaker with who arguably is a little more styly versus substance, that works perfectly with the image obsessed world of Hollywood. You know, the upside down weird world of Hollywood. I mean, Elle Fanning, who is done a few things before, just as Jessie, perfect. You know, and the girls that she's involved with, the three kind of almost the 3 points of the triangle in a way. There are a lot of triangles and stuff. There's a lot of symbolism in this film. There's a lot of symbolism in many of Refn's films. I mean, Refn's, one of his favorite filmmakers is Alejandro Jodorowsky, which is one of the most symbol-obsessed filmmakers ever. I mean, he's made these films, El Topo and The Holy Mountain, which are just collections of symbolism, you know. So, and very few filmmakers can really pull that off, can just pull off that kind of pure symbolic type of stuff, you know. It gets into really experimental stuff, but Refn does it. I mean, Only God Forgives was dedicated to Jodorowsky, so he brings that kind of sensibility here, and again, it works perfectly for a movie about Hollywood, which is a movie, which is a world that's full of totems and symbolism, and the idea of Hollywood is almost this kind of place that's under the control of a neon demon, of this almost like these three people that Jessie begins to become to her friend, Jenna Malone as Ruby, and then her two model friends, Gigi and Sarah, who kind of become this kind of triad here, this kind of the cabal, the coven, you know, almost in a way. Again, the idea of the world of witchcraft and cults and covens and Aleister Crowley, Do What Thou Wilt, and all this stuff. It seems to work perfectly with the world of high fashion and Hollywood. The world of high fashion, which is almost kind of a world within a world, where it's almost like the stuff in the Neon Demon, as crazy as it can be. It almost seems like that the real world is even crazier. Like our main character Jessie, she's 16 years old, and the agent that she goes to is like, well, we'll just pretend you're 19. Whereas I think most models, they start them off at like 13 or 14. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, in the world of modeling, Jessie is almost kind of middle-aged. It's a weird, wacky, like upside-down world. And again, I think it's just perfect for the sensibilities of this guy, Winding Refn, who makes these films that are so exaggerated and odd and visually stunning, you know. So, I mean, there's all of this symbolism throughout the film, some of which I understand, some of which I not, of the full moon, of, you know, like Diana, and the panther, and the gold paint, the gilding, the invocation with all these neon triangles and almost these sequences which are almost these hypnotic, like ritualized sequences of our lead character coming into these new states of consciousness, of awareness, of she's coming into who she is, but then there are all these people who are kind of coming after her. It's an interesting story. I don't want to spoil it because I didn't really have a lot of it spoiled, and but there's not really much to spoil, you know. But the soundtrack by Cliff Martinez blew me away. It's really one of my favorite electronic soundtracks of the past few years. I mean, and there's a lot of soundtracks. Everybody from Cold in July to It Follows, everybody wants to do an electronic soundtrack, and they want to do their own thing. Cliff Martinez is a composer, who is just specialized. He specializes in these like slow burn, you know, kind of very low key, slow burn soundtracks, which again are all about kind of underscoring the emotional landscape of the characters in the movie. Not with these big themes, but just these very resonant sounds and all of this stuff. You know, he came to big prominence with Steven Soderbergh, and a lot of the Steven Soderbergh style, I think you could attribute to the soundtracks of Cliff Martinez, and he's worked a lot with Nicolas Winding Refn, and this one I think is one of his most recent soundtracks. It's so great. There were times listening to it where I heard almost bits of Vangelis. I had to get the soundtrack. There's a track called "Don't Forget Me When You're Famous." It's the track where when the photographer takes Jessie and he drives her up to the top of the hills, and they're looking over Hollywood. They're looking over Los Angeles, and it's full of these like little bells and resonant bells and low synths. Which remind me so much of Blade Runner. They remind me so much of, it's like almost like and Vangelis doesn't even do those types of soundtracks anymore, but it's almost like the old early 80s Vangelis. And then there are also moments which are kind of half techno with some techno beats, and then other halves which have these weird kind of almost theremin. The Neon Demon, the title track, which is just called the Neon Demon, has all these like woo, like it's almost like a science fiction movie. Like there's this weird, eerie type of echo thing, you know, where it's almost like this is almost like a kind of like a theremin 50s sci-fi soundtrack thing. So I love it. A lot of originality, you know, within. The arena of electronic soundtracks, which these days is kind of lacking in originality. A lot of people want to be John Carpenter Jr., you know, when there's a lot more to soundtracks than just John Carpenter. You know, there's Giorgio Moroder and Tangerine Dream and Wendy Carlos, and there's a lot of stuff going on here, you know, and the new techno guys, you know, so you know, some of these guys need to kind of expand their horizons, you know. Specifically, like It Follows, I felt that was very uninspired as far as the soundtrack. But anyway, that aside, so the soundtrack again is just giving you this undercurrent of the dreams of this character and the gilding. There's the scene where she's covered in gold paint by that photographer, and you know, his got his thing. Oh my God. Oh man. Now, one of the reasons why I stayed away from this film is there was all this talk that the end of the film, it gets crazy and the film takes a left turn and it gets weird and the film, I think, as far as the tone of the film, is very consistent from the beginning to the end. I mean, it gets crazy, and it kind of goes a little upside down and topsy turvy. But as I said, the world of fashion photography and these people who are literally starving themselves and committing slow suicide in order to look and feel and be this what the industry wants, going through the grinder literally. I mean, it's an upside down world. So taking it to the next level in the context of a weird Nicolas Winding Refn movie, it's perfectly appropriate. It's not. I thought it was like you know, like an Eli Roth. You know, like Eli Roth will do these movies where they just take these left turns and they just get like Looney Tunes, you know, or Rob Zombie too. They'll just take these left turns and they'll just get Looney Tunes, and it's just like, well, this isn't even consistent with what we've seen before, you know. It just gets like, you'll have like farting and kung fu and all of this and it's like, no, it's just like a joke. This isn't. It's like it's not even that it's that crazy. It's just it's not consistent with the movie that's led me up here. You're just throwing some junk in the whole thing. And Nicolas Winding Refn is not like that. Nicolas Winding Refn understands tone. He is a European art house director at heart, you know, and he has a firm grasp of tone and rhythm, and so this movie is consistent throughout, and it gets wild at the very end, and it gets crazy, but it's consistent with the wildness and craziness of the entire movie. So don't be worried about that. Don't worry about going off the rails and doing some kind of Eli Roth style digression, because that's not in the mix. That's not happening. And I mean, the film looks just beautiful. Oh my God! I mean, the look of the style of it, the scope, cinematography, and it's just, oh my God! It's just stunning. This is a movie to really enjoy, and a movie that was, you know, about the fashion industry, and so it needs that kind of gloss and sheen that someone with that aesthetic sensibility of Refn who can bring to it. So I won't I won't waste any more of your time. Neon Demon, a good movie. If you were thinking, oh, I don't know if Only God Forgives was not good, go back to it. It takes him. He's taking it back. He's going, you know, Drive, and then Only God Forgives, and now the Neon Demon is good. It's worth it.